Hello everybody and welcome to the 10th and final episode of our PHP series. And this episode is all about working with forms in PHP. That is how we can handle data that the user inputs in our HTML form and insert that data and work with that data through our database. So far we have inserted, updated, read and deleted data manually using PHP, but now it's time to make our application truly interactive by letting real users input data through HTML forms that gets saved in our database. So by the end of our episode, you'll have something like this. Suppose you want to enter your name, and okay, let's say it's Jalis, right? So Jalis at gmail.com, and if I click on submit, it'll say data submitted successfully, and if we go back, it'll display that data beautifully in a table. And this is all inside our index.php file. And if we submit some more data, so let's say Sam once again, and Sam at gmail.com, and if we hit submit, it'll say data submitted, and this is redirected to our insert.php page. And if we go back, we can see that in our PHP myadmin as well, inside our users database, or I mean users table, the entries are saved. So that is what we'll achieve by the end of this episode. And a quick disclaimer that we have already discussed full CRUD operations in episode 8 and 9 of our PHP series. So in order to not make this video a bit long, I am only going to physically type out the index.php and insert.php file. So I have already edit.php and delete.php ready, so I will just be explaining them briefly. Now with that, let's get on with our episode. Now first, we'll build a simple form where users can submit their name and email, and we'll be doing that inside index.php. So just so you know, I have started XAMPP, and inside XAMPP, Apache and MySQL. Now inside this VS Code, this is our edit.php and delete.php. We'll be discussing these later, but for now I'll be removing this code. This was to demonstrate to you guys what it was. So I'll be typing out an HTML format first. So first I'll type out the boilerplate for HTML. Let's say form with PHP, right? And inside our body, we will be typing out a form tag, and this will be directed towards, like I said before, the insert.php, and the method that we'll be using is post. And after that, we'll be typing out an input tag, which will have a type of text, and the name will be name, and we'll keep a placeholder which instructs the user or prompts the user to enter your name. And we'll make this field required, so the user has to fill this if he or she wants to submit the form. So our br tag, let's copy this line, and then I just did that with Alt Shift and down arrow key, by the way, if you don't know. Now after name, we'll be sending our email, so let's say enter your email. After that, we'll be creating a button for submission, so button, and its type will be to submit our form. So it'll, okay, forgot to close the quotes there, submit, and then it'll just say submit and slash button. So close our button tag. Now this is it for our PHP file, so let's just send this to the side and reload this. So you can see that enter your name and enter your email has been outputted to our web page. Now to handle our submitted name and email, let's create an insert.php page, and moreover, this form will send the data to insert.php using the post method. So we'll be creating some code inside the insert.php. Now for that, we'll be creating a connection variable as discussed in our previous episode regarding, okay, we'll just open the PHP tags at first with a question mark and PHP, and then end it with a question mark and angular bracket. Okay, I meant to type out question mark. Okay, and angular bracket. Okay, now inside this, if we are working with a database and PHP, we of course need a connection variable called con. Now you can name this variable whatever you want, but I will name it con. Now we'll use MySQL underscore connect, and as discussed before, first we have to enter the name of our server. We are using XAMPP localhost, so I'll enter localhost, and then root, this is our username, our default password which is empty, and then our database name. Now if you might have noticed, or if you have watched our previous episode, we are working with a database called testdb. So inside this parameter or argument, I'll enter testdb. Now that is it for our connection variable. Now since we want to confirm that this request is handled by post, so we'll use the server superglobal. So server, and then inside server we will use the request method underscore method. And if our request method is equal to post, we will then work with our data and store them in PHP variables. So for storing, okay, let me turn off caps lock. So for storing name, we'll use something called HTML special chars. Now this is to prevent cross-site scripting attacks, that is XSS attacks, so that the malicious people or hackers can't enter data directly into our code. So that HTML special chars helps in that. So we'll access the name that we sent through our post method. We have sent name and email. So in order to handle that, we'll be using the post superglobal and accessing it through name at first. So name will be stored in name, and let's just copy this line and we'll store email as well. So email and then email. Pretty simple, right? Now after storing our variables, okay. Now after storing our data entered through our form or received through our form inside variables, we will now work with that data. So let's create an SQL query that handles it, and we'll be creating it inside our if statement. So SQL $SQL will equal to, now we have to insert this data that we just received into our database, so we'll use an insert query. So insert into our users table. So insert into users. What are we going to insert? We are going to insert name and email. So these are the values of our columns, name and email. These are the values, and I meant these are the column names, but the values are stored inside our variables. So we'll be using our variables name and then email. Let's close our bracket and end it with a semicolon. Now that is our SQL statement. Now in order to execute this SQL query, we will use MySQL query. So if MySQL underscore query, and we'll be running this through our connection variable, since we want to run that query inside our test database, and that test database is linked through our connection variable, that is con. So we'll have to enter con at first and then our SQL query, so SQL. Now if this query is successful and data is inserted successfully, we will echo out data submitted successfully. And then after that, we'll be echoing a link that will take us back to our index.php page. So br, first of all, to make this link occur in a new line, and then an anchor tag with an href attribute of index.php. And after that, we'll close the anchor tag and just say go back inside the link, like we observed before. Close the anchor tag, and then we'll write, just after our semicolon, we'll write our else code. We will echo out that an error occurred. So if our query is not successful, it should tell it why it is not successful. So error, and then we'll concatenate an error message, and we'll do that by using MySQL underscore error and $con. Now this will output an error message if any error occurs. So MySQL close. Now this is to disconnect our PHP from our database after we are done with our operation. Now, okay, let's test if our method was successful. So let's type out Marcus, and let's say Marcus @gmail. I meant to type out @gmail.com. So let's submit it, and it said, okay, I think I've made a mistake. Okay, submitted, TED. I meant to type out T. Why am I typing? Okay, so it says data submitted successfully, but I think now this will send our data twice into the database, but that's not a problem. Let's check our database to see if any data occurred. Now, of course, there's Jalis and Sam, but let's see if Marcus appeared. Okay, we have Marcus twice since I decided to reload that page, Marcus and Marcus. So at least our insert.php is working just fine. Now we have handled data or received data through our index.php form and inserted that data successfully into our database. Now let's try to read this data and display it through a table. And that we'll do that by creating a table which fetches the data from the database inside our index.php file. Now outside our HTML tag, I'll create a PHP tag. So we'll do that by doing this. Now question mark and angular bracket n. Now inside this, we'll again create a connection variable, since we have to do that when we want to work with MySQL and PHP at the same time. So MySQL connect, once again localhost, and then our root, which is our username, and password, and our test DB. This should be DB. Okay, my D key was not working. But after that, I'll create an SQL query. SQL equals, we will select each and everything that is present in our database. So select star from our users table. So select star from users, and we'll end this. And we'll be storing that query, we'll be executing that query inside a result variable. So MySQL query, we will run our SQL query, but we'll be running that through our con database and SQL. Okay. Now what this will do is, since we are selecting from our database, that we are trying to read the data from our database, this will return some number of rows. Now we'll be using something called MySQL num rows, and then we'll be storing our result variable. If the number of data returned is more than 0, then we'll output that data into our table. So we'll create a table by using echo an h3 tag, and let's say it will say all users, right? And we'll close that h3 tag, and after that we'll create a table. So creating a table is kind of tedious, so I'll directly skip to the part where I have to explain some stuff to you guys, so that this video is not too long. Okay, now we are done with creating our table. It would have been tedious to type all this out and make you guys wait, so I took this approach. So what we have done here is we have created a table with a border of 1, and on that table, for our table headers, that is for our column names, I have created table headers which has ID for our ID, name for our name, and email for our email. And we have also added an extra column for actions, which will contain our edit and delete actions. Now after creating our table header, we have written, while inside our row variable we have used a method called MySQL fetch a source, and we have stored our result variable. Now since this query, that is selection query, will return a number of rows, we have converted those rows into associative arrays and stored those associative arrays one by one in our row variable. So first of all, this will be converted into an associative array which has a key of ID, name, and email, and we can access that through our bracket notation, square bracket notation. So row ID will return this ID, row name will return this row name, and row email will return this email, Jalis email. Okay, so I hope that is clear to you guys how we are accessing this. This is basically an associative array. So not only that, since we have to send data through our query string to our edit.php and delete.php, we have also accessed their ID and sent that through a query string. So this is basically using the get method through a query string. We have created an anchor tag where we send the ID of the row that we, or the data that we have to edit, through our query string. So ID equals to, and we will handle that request, get request, inside our edit.php, and the same is with delete.php. So this is sending. So if I click on the delete button, it is essentially sending the ID of the data that I want to delete through this query string. So that specific data will be deleted. So I hope that is clear to you guys. Now let's see what happens if we open up index.php. If we reload index.php actually, so it will display our data. Now about this query string, if I press on edit in sam@gmail.com, you can see that ID 15 is sent in our edit.php file, and we are prompted to edit our data. So that is how it works. Now I hope you understand this display of data through our table. Now I'll explain to you guys how the edit.php works. Okay, so first of all, like I stated 2 times before, inside our index.php and insert.php file, of course we have to use the con variable, and this is all the same that I explained before, but here we have used the isSet method to see if we are receiving any ID key through our get superglobal. So let me just control Z that. Now if we are getting an ID key, so suppose if we click on edit, and if we are getting this key, we will start executing our edit request. So it will specifically select that user from our table, and it will display that user's data onto our form. So it has form with Jalis and jalis@gmail.com already present, since we have entered the value of our associative array. So we have done the same. We have searched for that ID. We have searched for the ID 14 inside our database, and it will return that ID along with all of the data inside an associative array, like in our insert.php file, and we can access that name and email through that same associative array. So that is how Jalis and jalis@gmail.com is being displayed inside our input fields, since we have set those values here. Now if I update those values and pass them through our post method, since we have not defined any action attribute, this same edit.php form, edit.php file will receive our post superglobal. So then we can set our name and email inside our updated name and email after we click on update. Inside these variables we have used HTML specific as here as well, and we can run an update query. So we will replace that name. So we will replace Sam with ASDS, and we'll replace the email with our newly updated email. So if I click on update, it will say user updated, and it will go back to users, and you can see that we have updated our name and email successfully. So that is how edit.php works. And as for delete.php, it is really freaking simple. Like I said before, we are sending our ID. If I click on delete, it will send that ID to delete that whole item or that whole row from our database inside our delete.php file. And inside our delete.php file, we have just checked if we have gotten that ID superglobal or not, and we have just run a delete query. So we have run MySQL query delete, and if the deletion was successful, it will say user deleted, like it says here, or if an error occurs, it will just say error. So let's check if our 14, that is Jalis, was deleted. So we can see that our delete is working perfectly fine as well. Now of course this might have felt rushed, so I will provide a document which has all of these codes ready and for you guys to test inside our description. And that was basically it for today. You have built a fully functional PHP and MySQL mini app. We have accepted user input via a form, inserted data into a database, displayed it dynamically, and also allowed editing and deleting via URL parameters like this. So that is it. you have made it to the end of this PHP series, and that's a huge achievement. Whether you followed along every video from the start or joined midway, I hope this series helped you build real confidence with PHP and also MySQL. So, from basic syntax to building a complete CRUD app, you have laid the foundation for dynamic web development. Thank you so much for watching and learning with me. And if you found the series helpful or this episode helpful, don't forget to leave a like and comment if you have any questions or queries, and subscribe for more programming series ahead. Keep building, stay curious, and happy coding. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.